So I've been thinking about how I read in this book that anxiety is not a problem, it's a solution. And when we look at that from the lens of polyvagal theory and internal family systems, it's such a kind way to describe anxiety. So anxiety and really any other like so-called maladaptive behavior or coping mechanism comes out of the body's wisdom and out of the experiences that have been threatening in the past. So, for example, in the book that I was reading, it was about vision impairments and how uh, with certain vision impairments can come a ton of anxiety because your body can't orient where it is in space. And so, in this instance, this person was struggling with intense anxiety, and it turned out they have a certain kind of vision that created like a tunnel vision type of a scenario, and they could not get themselves to go across bridges, like to drive across bridges. And they would get to the bridges, and then they would have a panic attack. And it was a solution rather than a problem because their body knew that it wasn't safe for them to navigate what looked like a really scary tunnel that they couldn't like make sure they could stay safe on. And so the panic attack came to save them from this far more dangerous situation. In this sense, when we understand all of these things that most of us try to push away, including, anxiety, addiction, certain what behaviors that people may call self-sabotage, self-harm, or even suicidal thinking, can all be the body's solution for what seems like an even more dangerous problem. And so, in this sense, they are what the internal family systems would call firefighters. They are coming in to do something that may not seem acceptable to society or may not seem like preferable even to the person, but that they come in subconsciously to save us from the thing that maybe is even more dangerous to the perception of the body subconsciously. And when we start to get to know these firefighters without being like, you have to leave, you're bad, go away, we can find out what are the exiles that they are trying to protect us from, right? So it could be an exile that experienced something really scary in your own personal history or in your ancestral history. But it could be something like this tunnel vision that this person was dealing with. For me, for example, I have both of those things. I have personal and ancestral stuff that my body has developed coping mechanisms to try to protect me from. And then I also have vision impairments, and my body is trying to protect me from having to be in dangerous situations with those as well. So, one of my symptoms from my brain injury that my vision impairment's related to is sensitivity to light. And so I would consistently get migraines when I was working in an environment where there were overhead fluorescent lights because my body knew that those overhead lights were just too taxing on my sensory system. And I kept putting myself in that situation. And so the way that it was able to get me out of that was to give me migraines because I would go home. Another example is that, I was really, really scared of driving and didn't get my driver's license. When I was in my teens because I was too scared. And that anxiety was actually about that my vision, I couldn't perceive spatially where the car was and how fast. I grew up near a really busy freeway. So that was a part of the driver's exam. It was merging onto the freeway. And that was like really tough for me to perceive with my vision impairment, which hadn't been identified. And so my body gave me anxiety, which made it so that I wouldn't do that. So, um, even when it comes to things like my own self-harm urges or suicidal ideation, I have recently been able to come to understand them as protecting me from this exile that early on just wanted to say no to a lot of things, wanted to disagree with a lot of societal or family expectations. And that would have been quite dangerous for me when I was young. And so to turn against myself with the self-harm or the suicidal thinking was actually a safer choice in terms of navigating that environment and my perception of it. So, all of this to say that if you are experiencing something that society has told you is not positive and is a problem, consider how it might actually be a solution from the perception or perspective of your subconscious vagus nerve that just wants you to be able to fit in with the group and survive and all of those different things. And when you see it as your body's best attempt at protecting you, at providing a solution for you, you can then get to know that part and help them to understand that there's a variety of other possible solutions now that you're an adult. When you're a child, there are not a lot of solutions, and they're usually not very functional solutions. But as we gain autonomy, we may have some more options. So, for example, I can now work with that part of me that would like to disagree with society expectations and remind that part that I live in a circumstance now as an adult where I am self-employed, so there's not a boss to get me in trouble if I do something outside of society's expectations. I am able to pay for my own housing, so there's not a landlord who can have a problem with any of those things. I am not in a relationship, so there's not a partner to say anything about those things. And I do co-parent, but I have demonstrated that I'm able to meet the requirements of the state where I live in to be considered a fit parent, and none of the no's that I want to say threaten that. So I can do a lot of those kind of what in DBT is called checking the facts to reaffirm to that part of me that is the firefighter protecting me from the exile who wants to say no. And I can let them know, like, hey, I really appreciate you coming to help me with this, but actually, I have a variety of other solutions. It's like if somebody walked up with a fire hose and to try to put out burning pancakes, and you were like, oh, actually, thank you so much. I really appreciate the gesture. And I actually can just take these pancakes off of the stove and put the pan outside and we'll be safe. And in that way, we're acknowledging and appreciating while supporting that firefighter and seeing that there are other possible solutions and letting them be with us as we see if those possible solutions work in the sense that we can be like, hey, like, I'm going to let you use that fire hose if I can't solve this problem with moving the pancakes outside. But I think I'm going to be able to. So can you let me try that first? And that can be a really nice way. I actually had a part that would pass out when I got scared of possible conflict. And it was super, super helpful when I was younger. It worked really well because once you pass out, people usually stop fighting with you. Um, but when I became a single parent, it was less functional because I was the only adult in that context. And it was scary for my kid who was a toddler at the time. So I was able to get to know that part that used fainting as a strategy to get us out of conflict and let them know that I had a variety of other skills that I was going to use, including I had the only key to my house. So I told them, I will make sure the door is locked and I won't let anyone else have a key or come in. I will hang up the phone if somebody is getting into a conflict with me on the phone. And I followed through on those things so that, if I was starting to feel like that fainting part wanted to use that strategy, I would hold on to my key and I would remind them, like, we have the only key and nobody's here. Or I would turn off my phone or I would block people's numbers, things like that. And over time, that part came to believe me. And I did the same thing with the migraine part, is that I slowly but surely transitioned myself out of working in buildings with fluorescent lights. And as I was making that transition, I started wearing hats so that I would protect myself from the overhead lights. So anyways, just an offering that perhaps many of your problems are actually solutions that maybe are not the solutions you'd like to use, but are still there as loving solutions, offering themselves with love and generosity. And that if you are able to get to know them and offer other possible solutions, you may be able to shift some of those things. So long as you're not just trying to make them go away, but you're trying to understand why they came in the first place and how to support that part of you that's the that they came to protect. Okay, love you so much.